Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to take you momentarily to a news conference being held by the North Olmsted Police Chief as well as the mayor. The update is for an incident that happened in the early hours of Saturday morning. It was about 1:30 in the morning. And this is about as convoluted as a story as you will get. It starts with a neighbor getting a knock at the door, and a man at that door is bloody, saying someone is trying to kill his uncle. When police arrived to the home where that man's uncle was, the house is on fire, and police are met with gunfire by someone at that home. They exchange gunfire. A 27-year-old Thomas Knock is hit. It was just discovered this morning, or at least released this morning, that 27-year-old died as a result of the exchange with police. One North Olmsted police officer was shot. He is expected to be okay. Not life-threatening injuries in this shooting, but you can see how convoluted this gets. We're going to play a story now filed by our Michelle Nix over the weekend that hopefully at least gets you started with the understanding. Again, this is very convoluted, a lot of moving pieces here, a couple of different locations, and you have obviously the suspect that exchanged gunfire with police has now died. Take a look at our story from Michelle Nix. When we see the mayor, the police chief step in, we will come to that live so that you don't miss a second of it. Take a look.
Yeah, fire are hitting the arm. Suspect down. We got him at gunpoint.
The violent night illuminated by this raging house fire on Alden Drive, where the suspect reportedly lived. A North Olmsted police officer was shot twice. The man police say had a gun, critically wounded. Both rushed to the hospital after a short foot chase through yards, and shots fired just before 2 in the morning.
I'm shocked. I can't believe it. I never thought this would happen, ever in my life.
The drama centered around what is now just the burnt-out shell of a home. Gwen, who lives next door, asked...
And we're going to interrupt that story for Michelle as we get the mayor of North Olmsted stepping up to the microphone. Let's take you there live.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to North Olmsted today. I am North Olmsted Mayor Nicole Daly Jones. I want to reassure all of our residents that safety continues to be a top priority of my administration. We had a regrettable situation occur in our city this weekend, which included both a shooting and a house fire on Alden Drive. I want to commend our police and fire departments led by Chiefs Wagner and Shep for their quick response and for all that they do to keep our residents safe on a daily basis. Thanks should also be given to our surrounding police and fire departments for their mutual aid and likewise quick response time. There is a long history associated with the house at 28456 Alden Drive. Our police department is very familiar with those involved in what happened. I urge our residents to remain vigilant. Keep your eyes and ears open. If you see any type of suspicious activity, report it to our police department immediately. If you see something, say something. It's important today to focus on the heroism of our officers in terms of this incident. They did a magnificent job, and I congratulate them and commend them for their bravery and their willingness to put their lives on the line every day. I'd like to now turn our press conference over to our Chief of Police, Bob Wagner.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for coming. Over the last couple days, 48 hours, we've been inundated with media requests over the incident that happened on Alden Drive. It's difficult for us to fulfill those as quickly as I know all you want. We try to give regular press updates as we get new information. But we are prepared today to grab everybody's email address, and we'll immediately send out the dash cam, or not dash cam, but body cam video, 911 audio, and radio traffic regarding this incident. So first off, I want to note that there's a couple different investigations going on here. We have Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation investigating the officer-involved shooting. They're a completely independent law enforcement agency. I've worked with them multiple times in the past, and have the utmost confidence that they have the resources involved to come to a conclusion on this eventually. We are not going to make a lot of comments on the officer-involved shooting. It's not my investigation. It is Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. But at 2 in the morning, I received a call on Saturday night that one of my officers was shot. It's probably one of the worst calls a chief of police could get. I immediately responded to the hospital. Officer was in good spirits. He was treated and released, thankfully. I met with him again today with his family. He's still in good spirits and recovering at home, thankfully. He was saved by his bulletproof vest. He took one round directly over the heart and then another one in the arm. North Olmsted is tasked with the other portion of the investigation, and that would be the arson and subsequent homicide of a person that we found inside the house when the flames were put out. Investigation took place. We found a body that we believe was shot, and then the house was set on fire. So we're tasked with that side of the investigation, while the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is tasked with the officer-involved portion. There's a lot of people that are in a lot of moving parts with investigations like this. We had responding officers from Westlake, Bay Village, Fairview Park, Rocky River. The Westlake officers actually transported my officer to the hospital. They did a great job. I can't speak highly enough of Westlake Police Department. They have a representative here today. We work in conjunction with them on a daily basis. We train with them, and I think the training came through this weekend. So right now I'm going to turn this over to Detective Sergeant Matt Beck. He's the one in charge of our detective bureau. He's going to be handling the arson homicide portion of this. But I do want to reiterate, I think you guys all now have the names of the people involved. If you haven't gotten I think the names are out there, but if we haven't gotten the pictures, we're going to be releasing that this afternoon as well. But I'll reiterate what the mayor said. We've been very, very familiar with this residence on Alden Drive for as long as I've been here, and that's over 25 years. Mr. Christopher Teresi has a long criminal history of theft, drugs, robbery, extensive. And then the other portion, the person that is now deceased that went to Fairview Hospital that we believe shot at my officers, he doesn't have a long history with the North Olmsted Police Department, but since probably June, we've dealt with him on a few occasions. So I know that one of the other requests that we're going to be fulfilling over the next few days is all the call history from the residences. We will be putting that together, but please understand that it does take time to put all these records, and collect them and get them out. So we will push those out to the media as soon as we collect them. But at this time, I'll turn it over to Sergeant Matt Beck. He can comment on the timing of the events and how they transpired. And if you have any questions, we might be able to answer some at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As the chief stated, I'm Sergeant Beck from the North Olmsted Police Department. I just want to take a minute to commend our officers from North Olmsted as well as Westlake for their heroism and bravery in that incident that occurred Saturday morning. Today was the first day that I actually got to witness the body cam, and I can say that I was very impressed with the officers and how they responded. I sent out earlier today the updated press release. So as you know, at about 1:34 a.m. on Saturday the 4th, a female was stopped in the Breckenridge development. She was approached by a male who was bleeding from his head and was reporting that his uncle was attempted to being killed over there on Alden Drive. Our dispatch notified all our available officers. They responded to the scene. Upon arrival, they did hear a single gunshot, unknown where exactly that came from, and discovered that the house on Alden was on fire. They subsequently did observe a male exit the front door of the residence and then take off through the backyards. Our officers gave chase and stopped him in the backyard where he fell into some bushes. And when the gentleman did fire shots at our officers, we returned fire, and as you know, he has since deceased. The officers then turned their attention to the house on Alden Drive that was ablaze. Our fire department did an excellent job with the assistance of all the surrounding agencies in extinguishing that fire. And upon making it safe to enter that home, we did discover a body inside, who is found to be Mr. Christopher Teresi. He's 52, of North Olmsted. He did have at least one gunshot wound, waiting on word from our medical examiner's office with any further information on that. So as Chief Wagner stated, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation is handling the officer-involved shooting portion, and my detective bureau will be handling the homicide investigation, and as well as assistance with the Ohio Fire Marshal's office will be investigating the arson. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to ask, or what I can, answer what I can.
Just in sequential order, if you could start with the interaction between the individual that approached the woman. Can you describe what he said to her and then what she did?
So he was bleeding profusely from above both eyebrows, and he stated to her that somebody was trying to kill his uncle and that they needed to send police to that address there in Alden.
Can you describe the interaction between the officers and the individual who was standing in the doorway on Alden when they arrived?
He was fleeing from the residence, so at that point in time there was no interaction between the officers.
That's what I mean. What happened between what does he do? What did they do?
So he was one took off running through the backyard. So our officer saw him, gave chase, gave multiple verbal commands to stop, identified himself as the police, and after about 5 or 6 of those notifications is when he finally got tripped up in the bushes, and the shooting subsequently happened from there.
Can you talk about the gunfire that the officer took and the role that his bulletproof vest played in saving his life?
He was shot twice. Don't know how exactly, if it was the same round or 2 different rounds, but he took one through his left arm. Luckily, nothing of any importance was struck, and then took one to the left side of his chest, right over his heart. The bulletproof vest did his job. It didn't penetrate his body, and subsequently saved his life, yes.
Can you talk about the relationship between Mr. Teresi, his nephew, and Mr. Thomas Knock, and I guess the police interaction with them?
So Mr. Teresi would be the uncle of the other involved, and then the shooter that is no longer with us is a good friend of the other involved.
So can you talk about the background of that home over the past, say, 25 years and police interaction with the folks that live there?
All I can say really is that Mr. Teresi has had an extensive history with our department for various incidences, and dating back for every bit of 30 years.
So
Are you able to say how the fire was
Can I ask a
started?
question?
Can I let her ask when Mr.
I just
Shea?
want
Thank
to
you.
clarify, so is Teresi, the man with the bloody eyebrows, Teresi, that's his uncle?
That's his nephew.
That's his nephew?
Yes, he's.
And so who is the man that was found on Lorraine Road?
That is the victim and a witness in this, and at this time we have not released his name.
So it's not the man with the bloody eyebrows?
That is the man with the bloody
That is,
eyebrows.
okay.
Yes, he was able to run out of the house prior to his uncle being shot and this fire being started. He ran out to many houses, rang on doorbells, knocked on doors, trying to get somebody. Because prior to all that, his cell phone was taken from him, so he did not have any ways of communicating to 911. So he was trying to find anybody that would call 911 for him.
So Mr. Knock, broke into the house? Did he break in?
That is unclear at this time.
Are you able to say how the fire was started and how it progressed so quickly?
Our state fire marshal, through their initial investigation, determined that there was some sort of accelerant used, and that is all we know at this time as far as the arson.
Was that used, as you might confirm, to cover up the shooting, or what?
Again, that's unknown, but we would believe that that would be the reason for the said fire set, is to try and cover up the homicide.
What's the motive for Mr. Knox's actions?
We have no idea at this point. Nothing we have found leads us to any conclusion as to why he did what he did.
How many shots were fired by the officers and by Knox?
That I don't know. The Ohio BCI will have that answer. We went at the conclusion of their investigation.
What kind of gun was Knox armed with?
I believe it was a 9mm handgun.
Are you convinced that the nephew is an innocent party in this? It's my understanding that Knox and the nephew have been friends since they were children, and that they're always spent time together.
Our investigations can continue into his involvement, but at this point in time, we have no reason to believe that he was involved in his uncle's murder or the arson and fire in that home.
Was Mr. Teresi being asked to leave or move out of the house?
From what I understand, that he was served a eviction notice by his stepmother.
In that particular house?
From that house, yes.
Who was served the eviction notice?
Mr. Teresi, as well as his nephew.
Any indication if this was a robbery?
Nothing leads to that point as of yet. The initial, I guess, portion of this is still under investigation.
Matt, could you talk about the good fortune of the officer and the fact that the equipment works in this case?
Yeah, that we carry level 3A body armor, which is designed to absorb the impact from handgun rounds as well as knife stabbings, and luckily that's all our officer was shot with was a handgun, so the bulletproof vest did work, and with no doubt about it, he's living and breathing today because of that.
Mayor, could you say what the schedule for demolition is? It's obviously that the house is burned out. Do you have to wait for the conclusion of the state and North Olmsted investigations, or is it going to be torn down anytime soon?
It should be torn down soon. We did issue an emergency demolition order this past weekend.
I just want to ask, are police looking for any other suspects for this incident? And then when was the last time, or has an officer in North Olmsted been shot? And then when was the last homicide in North Olmsted?
There are no other suspects that we are looking at this time. The officer that was shot was the first officer shot in the line of duty in North Olmsted. The last homicide that we had here in North Olmsted was
April.
Oh yes, the murder-suicide at our Giant Eagle.
Was this the first time the officer fired his weapon?
Yes, on duty, correct.
Matt, are you identifying the officer?
Not at this time.
But is he at home recovering?
He is, yes.
It's my understanding the ATF was on scene at one point. What was their role?
They were, I'll call it tobacco and firearms, so we had firearms involved, so they were assisting with that part of the investigation.
Okay. Nothing like a search of the house or anything like that? Or?
We were searching the house for evidence. They assisted in that, yes.
Is there anything you'd like to say to the neighbors around the residents?
We received multiple phone calls. Definitely they were concerned about their neighbor's house being up in flames, but they all willingly evacuated their residences as they were ordered to do for their safety, and we are grateful for that. It made our job a lot easier, and once the fire was out and we allowed them to return home, they all cooperated very well, so we appreciate that.
Matt, for you and the mayor?
Say, sir, to the neighbors, this gentleman, the nephew, as I believe you said, or someone, knocked on several doors to try and get some help. I know people are a little scared to open doors, but about being a good neighbor, maybe calling somebody sooner, anything that might have facilitated an earlier response.
Our calls, obviously, at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can imagine that being awoken by somebody bleeding, screaming into your camera ring doorbell, that you may be a little hesitant to answer the door. So they did the right thing and they contacted our dispatch. But by the time that our calls got made out and officers can put 2 and 2 together, he had already made his way down the road and found that lady that was on the side of the road. So,
For Matt as mayor, would it be accurate to say that Mr. Teresi was a nightmare of a neighbor for the people on Alden Drive?
Mr. Teresi had his problems. Again, I'm not going to go into too many details about that, but you know, to say that he was a menace to that street, I'll leave that up for those people to say. I don't live on Alden, so I don't want to comment on that.
Can you describe the nature of the calls, that previous calls?
Domestics, theft investigations sometimes led us there, warrant arrests for Mr. Teresi that I've been involved with in my career.
Thank you.
So if everybody wants to get with our IT professional, Joe, he's taking a list. He's over here in the back. He'll take a list of email addresses. If you want to
Dan DeRose with 19 News. Looks like they're wrapping up this news conference in North Olmsted. As you have heard here, and as I was describing before this news conference even began, this was convoluted to say the least. We now know a little bit more and can connect the dots as to what happened. We know that the first individual that you heard was bleeding profusely from the head when he was knocking on doors in that Alden Drive neighborhood. He was looking for help at around 1:30 in the morning. Finally, someone calling into 911 with the notion that the young man that was bleeding profusely saying that someone was trying to kill his uncle at the home on Alden Drive. Police get called. Police show up to that home. They hear a single gunshot. They see the 27-year-old Thomas Knock coming out of the doorway. He sees police. He takes off through the backyard. He gets caught in some bushes, and as police approach, Thomas Knock, according to police and their side of this, he fires at police. They return fire. Thomas Knock is hit, taken to the hospital. We found out this morning he did die as a result of that exchange with police. We find out that the North Olmsted police officer took a shot through the arm, and then a bullet hit his bulletproof vest right above his heart, giving credit to the bulletproof vest for saving that officer's life, and that's why they wear those tactical, what were known as Tactical 3 armor-plated vests. Once that shooting occurs, the house is now on fire. And once the fire is put out, they go in and they do find the body of that uncle. Remember, the nephew was the one running around bleeding from the head, saying that someone was trying to kill his uncle. That uncle was Christopher Teresi, 52 years old. And as you heard from police, he has a lengthy criminal history. They have been to that home several times for everything from theft investigations to domestic violence. He had been recently served with eviction papers by his own stepmother to get out of that house. She did not live there. He lived there with his nephew. So that's where we're at with this. Multiple investigations now taking place. North Olmsted Police taking over the homicide. So that would be the death of Christopher Teresi, the body that was found inside the burning home. They are also handling the arson investigation. More than likely, that house set on fire to try and cover up the homicide that occurred, and that fire more than likely created by Thomas Knock, because they're not looking for any other suspects. And then the investigation of the officer returning fire, that has to be handled by the Bureau of Criminal Investigation through the Ohio Attorney General's office, so that investigation can be neutral. A lot of moving parts, a lot of violence there, and unfortunately 2 dead at the end of this entire situation. You heard that police are going to be releasing body camera video, radio traffic, as well as the 911 calls. That is going to be interesting video. You heard the officer say that today was the first day he got to watch the body cam video of the officer being shot, and that when you see officers arrive and the help that that officer is given once he was shot is commendable by all agencies involved. So there's going to be a lot that develops between now and our 3 o'clock news. So make sure you tune in to Channel 19 at 3 so we can show you the latest in this investigation and some of that body cam video in our 3.5 hours of news. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media at Cleveland 19 News.